What do you think happens after you die?
If you didn't get it right, you're gonna come back.
Until you get it right?
Yeah, I believe in the ultimate God concept. I believe in Satan. I believe in demons. I believe in ghosts. I believe in spirits. I believe in the spiritual realm. I believe in a lot of shit. I believe in all that shit. I've experienced a lot of shit.
XXXTENTACION once portrayed himself as a god in one of his songs, but specifically as the god of death. Around the same time, he also showed the complete opposite side of himself in another track where he humbled himself before God and asked for forgiveness for all the sins he had committed. It's actually a beautiful song. In another record, he even rapped as if he had made a deal with the devil, and in one of his freestyles, he took on the perspective of the devil himself. In another song, he wrote about being hunted down and killed by the devil. It's honestly fascinating to see the different perspectives X explored throughout his music. You can tell he genuinely enjoyed writing about subjects like mysticism, religion, spirituality, and symbolism. Call it whatever you want. These themes appeared over and over again in his catalog. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, XXXTENTACION openly talked about believing in God, the devil, and many of the spiritual concepts surrounding the Bible. He frequently used those ideas to build the stories and emotions inside his music, and that's always been one of the things that stood out the most to me about his artistry. Now, before we go any further, let's make one thing very clear. This is art. Don't take every lyric literally. This isn't one of those clickbait videos claiming X had a deal with the devil or that the devil somehow caused his death. A lot of channels push those kinds of stories, but that's not what this video is about. My goal here is to analyze XXXTENTACION's music, break down the themes he explored, and show why he was such an incredible artist. Even if X personally believed in some of the ideas he referenced, remember that we're still talking about music. Lyrics often mix personal feelings, symbolism, storytelling, and imagination. With that being said, let's get into it. I've always wanted to talk about I Spoke to the Devil in Miami. It's easily one of my favorite XXXTENTACION songs. Not just because of how it sounds, but because of the entire story and world that it creates. But even though this video is called XXXTENTACION's darkest song, there's no way I can talk about this track by itself. Because if you've actually listened to I Spoke to the Devil in Miami, you've probably noticed something. The story never really ends. It leaves so many unanswered questions and room for interpretation. But once you connected with X's 2017 XXL Freshman Freestyle and Trained Food from the Skins album, you start to notice there's a much bigger story tying all three together. So let's start from the very beginning. I Spoke to the Devil in Miami is absolutely about X himself. It's about what he was going through mentally when he wrote it. One thing X always did was use fictional stories and different characters to express his own emotions instead of speaking directly about them. He does the exact same thing on Skin, where he tells the story from the perspective of a girl struggling with depression who ultimately takes her own life. And that's just one example. He uses that same storytelling approach in I Spoke to the Devil in Miami. Right from the opening lines, it's obvious. He describes someone trapped in complete darkness, where the sun no longer shines. Someone who's so emotionally broken that they can't even feel pain anymore, or even cry. It's the perspective of someone who's completely lost and doesn't see any purpose in living anymore. Then the song introduces one of its most important lines. 10 for the wolf, 3 for the shepherd, and 1 for the sheep that's led by your leopard. To understand what X is saying here, you first have to understand the story he's referencing. It's based on the old fable of the wolf and the shepherd. In the story, a wolf spends a long time living around a flock of sheep. Since the shepherd watches over them every day, he keeps a close eye on the wolf to make sure nothing happens. But because the wolf never attacks, the shepherd eventually lets his guard down. One day, he leaves the sheep alone. And you can probably guess what happens next. The wolf destroys most of the flock. The lesson is simple. The wolf manipulated both the shepherd and the sheep. In X's metaphor, the wolf represents the devil. And if you're familiar with the Bible, you already know sheep often symbolize innocent people who can easily be led astray, which fits perfectly with what this song is really about. A person who's completely hopeless and eventually gives in to evil. Then comes another incredibly important line. I took a bite of the apple. Give me all you can offer. If you know the story of Adam and Eve, the symbolism is pretty obvious. The serpent convinced Eve to eat the forbidden fruit, even though God warned them not to. By doing that, they gained the knowledge of good and evil, but they also had to face the consequences of that choice. The same thing happens to the character in this song. He accepts Baphomet's offer. Baphomet promises to save him, but only if he's willing to give up everything. And what exactly is that price? The answer comes in the very last line of the song, Anima Vestra. Translated from Latin, it means your soul. But before that deal is ever made, the song gives us a conversation between the main character and Baphomet. And honestly, the way X wrote that dialogue is one of the most fascinating pieces of storytelling in his entire catalog. You can almost picture it. The claws, the devil's grin, Baphomet standing right in front of him, speaking. X doesn't just tell you what's happening, he makes you see it. That's what makes this song such a masterpiece. But it also leaves us with one huge question. Alright, this guy just sold his soul to the devil, and we already know what happens after he dies. The song makes that part pretty clear, but what about everything that happens before then? That's where X's 2017 XXL Freshman Freestyle and Train Food come into the picture. Before we get into either of them though, we have to understand the context behind both songs and how they connect back to I Spoke to the Devil in Miami. In Train Food, X tells a story from a first-person perspective about an encounter with death or the devil. Call it whatever you want. Meanwhile, in the XXL Freestyle, we are hearing that exact same story, but from the perspective of the being that's come to take X's life. That freestyle also connects directly to I Spoke to the Devil in Miami, with multiple callbacks and references throughout. Now to continue our story, Train Food opens on what seems to be the very day everything finally comes to an end. X describes how he felt that day. For the first time in a long time, he sounds genuinely satisfied with everything he'd accomplished. And if you've been following the story so far, you probably remember exactly what X gained at the end of I Spoke to the Devil in Miami. Then the first verse makes something even more obvious. Train Food feels more personal than ever. It's about someone trying to leave a dark past behind, trying to become a better person, trying to move forward. But no matter how badly he wants that new life, he can't escape what he's already done. Because no matter which path he chooses now, the decision that truly mattered was made a long time ago. What's really crazy is just how many details and layers of symbolism are packed into this song. X says that death came to him, but it came unarmed. That's important. Death is almost always portrayed carrying a scythe, the weapon used to collect souls. But according to X, it didn't need one, because ever since I spoke to the devil in Miami, his soul already belonged to it. And then Death laughs. By the third verse, Death is standing face to face with X. And that's exactly where we jump back to X's 2017 XXL Freshman Freestyle. Because this time, the story is told from the devil's perspective. He introduces himself. I am the serpent. I am the demon, the son of the serpent. Remember, back in I Spoke to the Devil in Miami, X already took the serpent's apple. So now the devil asks him a series of questions. What is your faith? What are you worth? And finally, if I kill you right now, would you go to heaven or the hell you believe in? What's fascinating is that Train Food asks the exact same question. X begins wondering where he would actually end up, heaven or hell. And both stories reach almost the exact same ending. In the XXL Freestyle, the devil tells X he has only 30 seconds left to decide. Then, in Train Food, X says his time has finally run out and death has arrived. I Spoke to the Devil in Miami, Train Food, and X's 2017 XXL Freshman Freestyle are all telling the same story. That's why these three pieces are so deeply connected. On one level, they're about X himself, about the way he chose to express his own thoughts, fears, and emotions through fictional storytelling. But at the same time, they're also about a character who's completely broken. Someone who just wants to feel okay again. Someone desperate to get everything they've ever wanted. Fame, money, success, the easy way. And in this story, the price for all of it is selling his soul. Now, whether you take that literally or metaphorically is completely up to you. Maybe it's about drugs. Maybe it's about chasing fame at any cost. Maybe it's about money. Or maybe it's something entirely different. That's the beauty of X's writing. He gives us the story, but he leaves the meaning for us to figure out. Still, there's one question that never really gets answered. Where did this character end up? Did he make it to heaven, or did he end up in hell? And more importantly, was any of it actually worth it? Personally, I think the answer was already hidden in the very first song. But what I find fascinating is that X goes out of his way to keep those final two songs completely open to interpretation, so you can reach your own conclusion. But if we're looking at it through X's perspective, I think there are a few clues that point us in one particular direction.
If you didn't get it right, you're gonna come back.